Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Jordan Ross, the founder and CEO of Collaborative Senior Care based in Braintree. Jordan graduated from Cornell University with a degree in economics and attended MIT Sloan's Executive Entrepreneurial Development Program. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Of course. I am really excited to have you on here to share more about you and everything that you're doing at CSC. So that's where I'd love to start is to have you share more about your business and what inspired you to start it.
Sure. So we help families find assisted living communities. We also provide a number of wraparound services. They may need help moving or selling their house, or if they're not ready for assisted living, we can help them find home care. The trend in the industry is that people are staying at homes longer and typically entering assisted living in their early 80s. So I found this based on actually helping my grandparents with this transition. It was pretty emotional, and we really had a hard time finding a community. They were Jewish, so they eventually settled on a community in Peabody that offered kosher food. And so these communities, have different levels of care, different types of food. So ultimately, we want to help clients find a great fit, in many ways serve as a matchmaker,
Mhm.
help the family alleviate a lot of the stress and worry.
Definitely. Yeah. And you phrased it perfectly about acting as a matchmaker, like helping to find the right home care agency or assisted living community for your clients to transition into. And so I'm curious to hear, I guess the best way to put it is about like your vetting process, about how you kind of like source the right agencies or communities for your clients to ensure it's a good fit.
Well, we'll visit, we've visited pretty much all the communities in Massachusetts at this point and get a feel for them and what they can offer. And then typically, really depends on the relationship with the family. But if the children are involved, typically the senior will want to live near the children. So in terms of geography, they have different levels of care in terms of on the medical side, and then different price points. And they may look for different other types of amenities in terms of food and um, other activities to facilitate the sense of community. So um, we have relationships pretty much with all the communities in Massachusetts, but it's really about finding a good fit for the family and the client.
Oh, absolutely. And with that, do you mainly focus on only Massachusetts or also like help with collaborations like throughout New England? Or I'd love to hear more about like your geographical ranges.
Yeah, I mean, we can help throughout New England at this point. We do have partners across the country. So if someone
Hmm.
is here and they want to move closer to their children in Arizona, we can find someone to help them. We wouldn't directly handle that, but we have relationships with people. And this industry is actually growing quite a bit. So there are four national franchises in the space, and I can kind of continue to see more competition. So it's good for seniors that there are people um, who are willing, ready, able, and willing to help them. And the business model, from my perspective, is that we get a referral fee from the community. But we're not gonna, we'll never place a family in a community, just for a referral fee. Our
Right.
ultimate allegiance is with the family and finding that great fit. And then we also stay in touch with their families over time, which really proud about. And I went through the development process of some of the larger national franchises that do this, and I just wanted to create my own brand. So I've really taken my time to make sure that the family's best interest was always at the center of what we're doing.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that the relationship doesn't end once their loved one is placed somewhere, you find the right agency. Because I can imagine for families who are going through this for the first time, they might be like, wait a second, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I don't know what to do next. So it's nice to have that ongoing support in case they do have questions, or if perhaps maybe they want to switch communities or switch home care agencies, you're there to support them and guide them through that process.
No, exactly. And sometimes they'll actually want home care in the community or other different types of services or amenities. So we'll always be a resource for them, but it's nice just to see them thriving and doing well.
Totally. So, in addition to that, what would you say sets collaborative senior care apart from your competitors? So, of course, you mentioned like being there throughout the process, even after they're placed, but what else kind of sets you apart from like the big franchises?
Well, I mean, we're a pretty small company at this point, so I handle the cases directly,
Mhm.
personally, and develop relationships. Um, and we're really there for them, with whatever they need. My competitors really just focus in on the placements because the other services aren't really as monetizable. So they're just
Mhm.
really focusing in on placing people and moving on to the next one, where I'm taking more of a long-term approach.
Definitely. That makes sense. And you mentioned that this industry specifically is growing pretty quickly. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on why you think that might be happening, whether it's because seniors are living longer, or I'm just curious to hear any factors that might be contributing to that.
Well, certainly, I mean, the baby boomers are all approaching retirement or have retired. So that's part of it, just the demographic trends. I mean, the other I think part of it is that, real estate has appreciated significantly in this country. So a lot of
Mm,
people have the resources. Typically, this starts around $6,000. So a good percentage of, the retired population has, significant resources through the stock market or appreciation, from their houses to be able to afford these types of services. But, as I said, typically we're really seeing people stay in their homes longer. The communities, assisted living, were typically built with the expectation that people would be moving in their 60s and 70s, and they're I'm seeing people moving in their early 80s.
yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And I can imagine that um, something that comes into play here is like the sandwich generation. And so I'm curious to hear about that, how you've kind of seen that, I guess, in the work that you do with people who are taking care of their elderly parents and then also their children, and how working with something like collaborative senior care will help them with that piece and navigating kind of like that sandwich and in between.
No, exactly. And typically I mean, we deal with the adult sons, but usually it's the adult daughter.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Always the women.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I feel like that is just a huge relief for them. I mean, it can be a lot to juggle a household and then aging parents or sick parents, and so I feel like that's probably something that you're seeing a lot too, is just those like generational juggling.
No, of course, and right. I mean, they have their children, and they're looking after their parents, so I appreciate all that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I also am curious to hear like what makes Massachusetts a good spot, particularly for senior care. I mean, I'm curious if you've noticed it just from us having great healthcare systems, and how that might come into play with the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, really strong healthcare, but also a really educated and um, successful retired population. So people
Hmm.
typically have, significant means, and um, a number of our, clients plan for this transition too. So they're
Hmm.
really aware of all the different resources, and it definitely makes my job easier. But I think Massachusetts is a pretty vibrant community, especially for retirees. So people are, going into Boston, their trips into Boston, seeing certain events, talks, lectures at colleges. So I think it allows seniors to really maintain a high quality of life.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing I'm wondering too is that if someone is looking to perhaps consider an assisted living facility or a home care agency for their parents or loved ones, what are some of the things that you kind of recommend they look out for to ensure if it's a good fit? I know you mentioned one of them being location, if they're close to like their kids or whoever it might be. And then also you gave the example of your grandparents and wanting the right food options and whatnot. But what are other
Hmm.
things that you tell people to kind of keep an eye out for or help guide them through?
I talk to as many residents as possible and the families of
Mm,
residents as well. I mean, ultimately, it is a business, so I would try, the cuisine and really take your time in making this decision. Typically, um, I mean, it depends, but there's a percentage of my clients that really haven't planned, and I can definitely be a resource for them, but it's a lot easier if they plan ahead and do some research themselves as well, and get an idea of what's important to them, what attributes, are they really looking for in a community.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you mentioned about being proactive with planning. I feel like it's one of those things similar to like getting an estate plan or will, where people sometimes don't always think about it until it's almost too late and you wish you
Right.
had it earlier. And so it sounds like with what you do, with people being able to find a home care agency or assisted living community, sometimes it can almost be a little bit late in life when they end up kind of making those decisions and probably cause a little bit more stress and anxiety.
No, exactly. And I'm happy to talk to them, and if they need home care or whatever, I'm happy to talk to them earlier on, as opposed to later, because I think that's in their best interest. They may be able to lock in better rates, um, but it's also kind of a difficult discussion because
Mhm.
people don't necessarily want to, think that they may need assisted living in 5 to 10 years.
Right. And so that's like a difficult conversation to have because it's like people don't want to think about their loved ones getting old or needing more assistance than what the family is able to provide. But to your point, it's almost like not talking about it can do more harm than good. And then you
Of
get into a
course.
situation where you're like, oh man, I wish we did this years ago.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. And on that topic of like home care versus assisted living, I'm sure that's one thing people also wonder too is like, well, which one is right for my loved one? Do they need an assisted living facility or can we do a home care agency? And so, in your opinion, could you break down the two and when might be the right fit for a person, depending on what their needs are?
Sure. I mean, in terms of home care, there's all types. I mean, there's non-medical home care, there's nursing home care, there's 24-hour home care. So, I mean, at a high level, assisted living makes sense if, home care is required, around the clock and the client really isn't able to afford to maintain, 24-hour care. But I think home care is a good option for, a good percentage of the population. Um, and, if the families can look after the mom or father too, I think it could be a good option. But it also can get expensive. So it just really varies on the situation. But I think loneliness is also kind of an epidemic with seniors. So I think, home care may alleviate some of that, but I think it's hard just to rely on home care for social connection.
Definitely. And to your point that you mentioned about the cost of it, I mean, that's another great reason why it's important to plan ahead with it because then you can kind of be strategic about saving for those costs when the time comes rather than getting to the point where you might need either assisted living or home care and then you have to find a way to afford it and pay for it, which can be really challenging.
No, exactly. Some home care companies accept different levels of insurance though, so that
Mhm.
may be an option. Typically, assisted living is all private pay.
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of probably helps people pick which choice they want to go forward with.
Hmm.
But I also can imagine too, just in your work, that you probably have like relationships with or partnerships with other professionals who also might work with your type of clientele, like maybe financial planners or people like that. So I'm curious to hear if you do that, and if so, what you've learned throughout that time.
Yeah, I mean, we work with all types of professionals in the senior care industry. I mean, really, we preach planning. So whether it's financial planning or thinking about selling their real estate, just kind of getting their affairs in order. We work with lawyers, elder care attorneys. So yeah, I just feel like it's great for the family to have a team.
Mhm.
And so, they connect us with families, we connect them with families. But, like the benefit of working with one of my companies is that I can connect them with vetted professionals so that they don't have to
Totally.
do all the work themselves.
Yes, definitely. And actually, that makes me wonder too. I feel like one thing that also comes with this difficult conversation about needing assisted living or home care is sometimes if maybe the siblings aren't in agreement about what they think their parents' care plan should be. And so I'm curious to hear if that's something you experienced and any recommendations you might have for any of our listeners who might be going through that, where maybe they have a different opinion or choice than their sibling might have when it comes to their parents.
Right. I mean, it can be a very difficult time for the family, but I really feel like that's why the planning is so critical. And figuring out who's going to be like, like the power of attorney and stuff like that,
Hmm.
because it can be difficult. And then, children may be fighting over financial inheritance. It's like it can
Yeah.
be very, very tricky. So yeah, I think just the earlier they try to get their affairs in order. And I've talked to a lot of seniors in religious communities too, and a lot of them have, thought about this process. And some of them, are in independent living already, and
Hmm.
not maybe not excited, like they're kind of aware of kind of where they want to go or what, the next 5 to 10 years may look like for them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so I'm also curious to hear when you started collaborative senior care and along with that, like how it's grown throughout the years and anything you can share that might have contributed to that growth throughout that time.
Um, well, I mean, we're ultimately a marketing company, so we've looked at, a lot of different channels in terms of customer acquisition, and we're investing heavily in digital and building relationships with um, the professionals that you mentioned. So
Hmm.
it's really like a relationship-based business now, but we hope to scale and really have, like a strong digital presence. There are a number of national digital players, so we're kind of excited about over time competing with them on a larger scale.
Definitely. Is there anything exciting coming up for collaborative senior care in the next year that you can talk about, or anything you might be working on that might be unique and exciting?
Yeah, we're going to enter the Chicago market, so in Illinois, and
Oh,
so we'll be in
interesting.
Boston and Metro, like call it Chicagoland. Yeah, so we're excited about that. We like really focusing in on large metros, that are you that are pretty vibrant. So yeah, I mean that'll be kind of like another new market, and then hopefully we can expand further beyond that.
That's exciting. So, no, on this topic, I know you mentioned that you were looking at big metros, but what made you choose Chicago specifically? Like, did you do research and kind of identify that it would be a good community to start? I'm curious to hear more about that.
Oh, I've been in Chicago quite a bit, and yeah, I mean it's one of the larger metros. And I have some relationships there, so I'm excited to continue to build upon.
Totally. And do you find that it's difficult to juggle like the two locations? Like, do you feel kind of pulled in different directions, or do you feel like you kind of have a good process for being able to be ultimately in two places at once?
No, I mean we have proof of concept. I am
Hmm.
going to be hiring a few people in that market, and we'll see how it goes. But I feel like we can continue the momentum.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for anyone who's listening to this episode who's interested in getting into the senior care industry, what advice would you have for them for getting started?
I think it's actually a difficult industry to break into. It's very, very competitive, but I feel like it's important to develop genuine, relationships and really relate to people that are trustworthy and have the best interests of the senior at heart. I've seen a lot of predatory businesses in this industry, and the last thing I would want would be a senior to, getting taken advantage of. So I
Hmm.
think you really have to be careful about who you associate with and how they run their business.
Yeah, that is a good point. And so I guess that's one thing I'm wondering too is that when someone is looking like for someone like yourself for their aging parent or whoever it might be, like what qualities should they look out for to know if it's like a true professional who's dependable or anything that you recommend they kind of ask questions about?
I think it's good to get referrals from people they trust, whether it's,
Hmm.
neighbors or people that have used an agency before. I think the online space is getting pretty crowded, but I think getting, like personal recommendations and getting vetted personally, getting the professional vetted, I think that's really critical because, the people can, vouch for the profession.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And now a similar question, but for entrepreneurship specifically, like what's one piece of advice that you've learned throughout being a business owner that you wish you knew when you first started, or one thing you would recommend to someone who's looking to just start a business in general?
I mean, there are definitely highs and lows. I've started a number of businesses before. I was in real estate development. We built strip malls, and then I ran a national nonprofit. So I mean, I was familiar. I just didn't understand how competitive this industry was, and
Mhm.
I thought everyone would just be reputable. I think I was a bit naive, but I think really, it's exciting, but I think you really have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and stay positive because there've been a lot of lessons I've learned through the process and really learning how to say no to situations that really aren't good for me or my business.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I feel like as entrepreneurs, it's almost enticing to just say yes to everything, but I feel like sometimes saying no can actually do more for you than saying yes to an opportunity would.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, yeah. And so another thing I would love to hear from you is how you kind of juggle, I guess, like your work-life balance, so to say. I mean, personally, I don't really believe in a work-life balance. I don't think it'll always be 50-50, but with the work that you do, I don't want to necessarily say that it's like vulnerable, but it's a lot of heavy work of like managing difficult conversations and whatnot. So I'm just curious to hear how you like to spend your time outside of work to decompress and all of that stuff.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I hike with my friends and I have two dogs, so I'm pretty active. But I think one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur is you can kind of establish your own schedule. So I've really like taken advantage of that and appreciated the flexibility. I'm working, pretty hard, but being able to go to the gym if I want when I want, and that's a
Yeah.
real benefit of being an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, totally. And I know that you're based in the Braintree area. I'm curious to hear what your favorite local businesses are to support.
Uh, I actually like Bertucci's in Braintree. I guess old school, but I always like Bertucci's there. Yeah.
That's a good one. And then for anyone who's listening to this episode who would like to get in touch with you if they're in need of your services or just have any questions, where can our listeners find you online?
We're on collaborativeseniorcare.com. They can also text me anytime, 617-686-6805.
Amazing. I will include those places in the show notes so that our listeners can easily find you from there. But thank you so much, Jordan, for coming on this week's podcast.
Well, it's my pleasure, Ashley. I had a great time.